I'm very happy to introduce to you tonight Alice Friman. A native of New York City and a professor emerita at the University of Indianapolis, Alice Friman has published her work in many prestigious journals, including Poetry, Boulevard, Prairie Schooner, Quarterly West, and the Georgia Review. She has also appeared internationally in such periodicals as Great Britain's London Magazine, Australia's Scarp, and Japan's Abiko Quarterly, and has received many awards and honors, including 3 prizes from the Poetry Society of America, Hopewell Reviews, Award of Excellence in Poetry, and a fellowship from the Indiana Arts Commission. Friman's published work includes 4 chapbooks and 3 books of poetry, including her most recent, Zoo, from the University of Arkansas Press, which won the Ezra Pound Poetry Award. Friman's poetry, whether about a trapped squirrel rotting between 2 walls behind her house's heater, or ancient Hawaiian women suckling puppies whose cooked legs they will soon crack to feast upon the marrow, or lions snarling over a zebra's bloody ribs in Kenya, cuts knife clean through our most cherished lies about family, about nature, and about ourselves. Resisting the impulse to romanticize the natural world and to raise the human animal above this zoo, she writes with perception and humor what's given, her own failure, the mess of love and childhood and death, and life that is a death, the mossy yearning of stepping stones across a stream. For to wish otherwise, that underground the earth is not just cemetery, is a fantasy this poetry won't abide. Instead, she turns a dry eye toward the difficult topics, the damage that can be done only by family, the disorienting reality of watching parents age, buying diapers for her father, and realizing her mother has lost 4 inches in height, how it seems that then suddenly the magician drops a handkerchief and her body wanders, too small for its skin. Her lines, to use her image, can be plain as bottle glass scratched with a nail, and make room for no pretty, no comfort, no language without tooth or yell, without hornets or the old stink of creosote in the yards. For me, nightingales don't visit, the poet writes. Only this mournful coo-coo-cooing coming through the window. What comes through her window is the real world, the natural world, including the human menagerie in all its tooth and gel, our world, from a view worth our attention. Please welcome Alice Friman.
Thank you for the introduction. Would you like to go on the road with me? Sure. Look at that. Input B, no input. I want to start off. You'll have to get used to my New York City accent. I want to read a first poem starting with a line that I stole from Robert Bly. But I don't want to give him credit for something he didn't write, see? So when I finish the line, I'll go like this, and you'll know that that's the end of Robert Bly, and the rest of it is me. It's called Another Spring. A lonely man once sat on a large, flat stone. The woman never sat, flat stone or otherwise. Lonelier, she tilted, one cheek cockeyed, ready to spring. Up for the Heinz ketchup, rye bread, up for a prune Danish. He'd grunt, roll a bloodshot eye. She read him like the Kabbalah. More soup, another napkin, another spoonful of gravy, pressing a ducky pond in his mashed potatoes the way he liked. Look how you sit. Half on, half off, he'd say, jabbing her with his fork. She'd laugh. Their two girls laughed, then chased their peas around their plate. Until, what's dessert? And where's the mail? And up her body clicked. Up, a regular Jill in the box, sleek as seal, uptight, bright braid. A polished stone, mono-buttocked in a girdle. Her two cheeks together, there must be no crack showing, not a sign. That's my mother and father. But you'll hear more about them a little later, whether you want to or not. I want to read you some love poems. Do you guys still fall in love? Talk to me. Talk to me. No?
They're lying.
We spent some time in Africa and saw two lions mating on the hill. And the only thing that you might have to, I want to remind you, is I make a reference to Uranus. Uranus is the god of the heavens. And every day, Uranus bends over in a sexual embrace with the earth, Gaia, and that's how come the day comes. Honeymoon. When lions mate, they disappear for days. Come together 6, 8 times a morning. We saw them on the ridge, he swaying over her, she on her back, fondling his ears, his mouth. I swear she raked the mane back from his face, and he intent on nothing but her yellow eye. Later they'll hunt, feed muzzle to muzzle, snarling in the kill, then lick each other clean to hold on the tongue the blood taste from the beloved's face. Such petting, such lion love. The sky arching above them, vast Uranus heaving himself on top of earth, his old girl, glancing over his shoulder with his bluest eye to copy what he had begun. A little love poem. Snow. Let us speak of love and weather, subtracting nothing. Let us put your mother and mine away for a while, your dying father, my dead one. Let us watch from our bedroom window how a slow falling snow crowns all nakedness in ermine. Do not look at me yet. Your face is flushed, your eyes too love-soaked, too blue. Outside is white on black and still, the sky deaf with stillness. Don't let it frighten you. Hush. There's time enough for that. Be content for now to watch the maples fill with snow, how they spread themselves, each naked limb making itself accessible. I think the sexiest word in the English language is accessible. I suppose this is a love poem. I suppose, like everybody else in America since September the 11th, well, after September the 11th, I was a television junkie, right? Weren't you? Just watching that over and over again. I'm from New York City. That's my home. My son was down there when that happened. And so I had nightmares. I guess a lot of you did too. I still do. And so I wrote this. Well, I have to tell you to explain. I have a sweet young husband. It's called Shattering. Tonight in your arms, watching over your sleep, unable for 3 nights now to let go of you, I imagine, can't help but imagine, you on that high floor, calling to say love, as if I didn't know that already, but you, like so many others, needing to lay down that as your last word. Terrified you'll not get out before that 2 tall building slides down its sides. Although you couldn't have known that then, could you, there being only the weight of that fire coming at you, and you so afraid. And I know because I love you, I'd have to talk you out of there, making my voice the fireman's ladder, the helicopter's rope that never came. Come, my own, my blue-eyed boy, I'd say. Walk out on the running nap of my voice your carpet, your cocoon, your velvet corridor out. But the fire, shh. Seal the lids to your eyes. Nothing is but where I'm waiting. And now, love, now. For now there must be nothing but us between us. And simple as placing one foot after another, you'd step through a blossom of glass into the bright blue air. Is this not crazy? You're asleep. The plosives punctuating your breath poof out your lips like pudding in a pot, or an engine idling on kisses. While I, ear to your chest and counting, borrow scenarios from our latest terror, as if we didn't have enough to go around. And shame. Look how self-controlled I made myself, how Hedda Gablerish, talking you through such brave and lovely death. All in the name of love, as if love were a name without presence or heat, without a face to Xerox and paste up all over town, or hug to your chest because before the whole world, because it was your heart leaped from your body, lost and looking for itself. And again, I'm there, only this time holding up that photograph of you I love, leaning against the railing in your blue suit when it was new, and smiling as if the sun itself summered in your face. And I, one more soldier in misery's army, wandering the streets begging to be listened to. The fire, and how I made of my voice a rug, a flying carpet to get him out. And yes, he came to me, yes, I'm sure. Didn't you see him running down those staircases of air? Well, there's different kinds of love. This one is a true story about a friend of mine who was in love with love. It didn't make any difference who it was. She was just in love with it. So it's called The Wish. This is a story for the ends of August, when the days yawn and roll over, the hot nights dragging their insomnia of stars. When the lake's lily pads so shoulder-shoving thick you're sure you could walk them, spin on sky water, Chinese dinner plates floating on sticks, twirling so fast you'd swear they're not moving. This is the tale of a pharmacist's wife, who at the age of 40 bobbed her nose, fluffed herself up, and waited for the cards to deliver. Visa, MasterCard, Discover, she was ready. Her hippie hairdresser, the TV repairman, the piano tuner. And when the fates turned up the yeshiva boy with black hair, red eyes, and allergies, she bought him a gold necklace, dubbed him Prince of the Aztecs, and deflowered him in the wild flowers of the field. What else did she know to do? Brought up on Hollywood and married to a pharmacist who couldn't fill her prescription. That summer, staring out their night window, while he counted pill bottles in his sleep, she made her wish, her deal, all or nothing. And when nothing turned up, the gutter ball, the short straw, the king of spades masquerading as oncologist, she took him to the big nothing, stiff as a ball-peen hammer between her legs, stiff as a sentence and insistent. Mr. Nothing, the only one true blue enough to know how to love her, starting with one breast, then the other, taking his good, sweet time, not missing a lick until she was through. Well, so maybe you're going to lighten it up a little bit, huh? This is a love poem, too. Some years ago, I was walking in, the drugstore. And by the drugstore, there's these racks of, like the National Enquirer and things like that. And there was a headline, and it said, honestly, it said, "Woman sees Jesus in microwave oven." It takes years to pick up something like that, to come up with a poem. At any rate, I thought, well, maybe she did. I'm sure she did. What would that be like? This is called Mrs. Beasley's Supper. She never considered herself worthy, but there he was, no bigger than a dashboard doll, riding the revolving plate. Redeemer, pin of the pinwheel, the groaning axis of this world, lit up and acquiescent as the potato he sat on, all eyes shooting out his love. Fixed to his purpose, under last week's gravy spattering of stars, he spun in slow motion, weeping out her guilt, unknotting, then knotting the long thread of her shame into the hair shirt of his passion. She crumpled at the knee. What did she care of wattage or rebate from Sears? She pressed both hands to the glass. He pressed his to his heart, the way he must have in the womb, lighting the dark squeeze of infinite space. Homunculus, bullion, fishhook of God, zapped in the humming electrons of the 2 million years it took to make him, and the 80 years of pink rollers and patience it took to bring him home. Born blind and spun dizzy, we stumble into empty space, clutching the paper tail of the donkey, groping for connection, then hoot at where the others end up, dangled from a lampshade or out the door. Another headline for laughs at the checkout, another ballerina twirling on a jewel box, one more joke, one more rubber chicken from God. That night, lipsticked and all fluttery, Mrs. Beasley put on her best blue dress, popped a paper daisy in a vase, then fished out the bottle of muscatel to savor a sip with her chop and baked potato. Who's not blessed? Well, I took early retirement in 1993. And I took early retirement so that I could spend my time writing. And I rented a studio. Sounds good. Sounds like a good life, right? I got this sweet young husband with blue eyes, right? He's making money. I'm there writing away. And then the powers that be looked down and said, aha, she's got some free time. And so for the past 7 years, I have been the main caretaker of my father and then my mother. My mother, who is now 95. And my life is very strong. I'm very strong. I shouldn't say that. I mean, my life is very tough, actually. In the beginning, first thing I had to do was to go. They lived in Florida, and I had to go and buy diapers for my father. Now, of course, I'm used to it. I can buy diapers for anybody. I can buy diapers for you. But when you first have to go and buy diapers for your father, it's a little much, you know. What I'm doing in this poem, I love to read at colleges because I don't have to explain too much. What I'm doing in this poem is taking off on Shakespeare's speech from Hamlet, to be or not to be. You know that speech. If you don't, fake it, all right? Because you're not allowed to graduate unless you know that speech. You know, to be or not to be, that is the question. Well, I think that Shakespeare was wrong. That's not the question at all. Diapers for my father. Pads or pull-ons, that is the question. Whether to buy pads dangled from straps, fastened with buttons or Velcro, pads rising like a bully's cup, stiff as pommel with stick-em backs to stick in briefs. Or, dear God, the whole thing rubberized, size 38 in apple green with or without elastic leg. Or the kind, I swear, with an inside pocket to tuck a penis in, little resume in a folder, old mole weeping his one eye out at the tunnel's end. The clerk is nothing but patience, practiced with sympathy. Her eyes soak up everything. In 10 minutes, she's my cotton batting, my triple panel, triple shield, my depends against the hour of the mop. Skeleton with a sponge of mouth, skeleton with a sponge mouth, dry as a grinning brick, waiting in the closet. She carries my choices to the register, sighing the floor with each step. I follow, absorbed away to nothing. How could Hamlet know what flesh is heir to? Ask Claudius, panicky in his theft, hiding in the garden where it all began, or behind the arras, stuffing furbelows from Gertrude's old court dress into his codpiece. Or better ask Ophelia, daughter too of a foolish, mean-mouthed father, who launched herself like a boat of blotters, only to be pulled, babbling, under the runaway stream. I was reading a book of poems by Emin Grennan, and there's a quote in there. He's talking about the death of his mother and father, and he says, "Would it be any comfort to know the dead we love are looking out from behind thick glass at us?" And this was right after the death of my father. And my answer to that is, this is called Ghost Story for December. In Virginia, snow lasts 2 days, then melts, leaving doilies on lawns and lumps of swan on the berm. A woman shivers in a yellow parka, carrying her gloves. She walks, looking for signs of her father, last reported not moving and aloof in his satin cupboard, waiting for seepage. She needs to know he'll stay there, through spring rain and the root inching a rope toward his heart. Already she's heard the first fly of next year buzzing her pain. Notes in her journal how grass in Virginia gets a head start, holding its green through winter. She worries what a twitch of warmth can budge deep in the sift of soil. And if here spring comes early, what does it mean for the father buried in Florida, where hibiscus and heliotrope and red passion flower, lush as pain, keep coming, coming, as if there were no such thing as death? Cave hic poetae, beware of poets who play with the dead. It's no comfort to know her father watches from behind glass, or rises to the surface of a lake, dead fish, repeating her old name, rotten daughter, through his mouth hole. The father she wanted was given 5 days before the end, and that in the form of a baby whose last breath settled the lid on a gift. Don't open it. That is what he called me. That was his last words to me. Rotten daughter. Well, after that, 2 months later, not even 2 months later, my mother ended up in the hospital and then in a nursing home, and in an angry vein. Last night, I dreamed again. Adult potty chairs and corridors, cottage cheese and peaches on a tray. Nothing that shines, not even language to pull me out and awake. No metaphor to wrap my new life in, only a jumble of paraphernalia and the red button she pushes and pushes for no one to come. Yesterday I did her nails, held each trembling finger to file and swab, cream with intensive care. The veins bulging across each ache and knob, down each arthritic knuckle, weaving a net to hold them. Poor veins, mama's veins, tote bag for bones. Each cord bruised blue and swollen as a traffic jam, or a telephone wire clogged with voices desperate to get out. We play casino, she naps, stirs, asks again when dinner's served and where. I push her in her chair, earning my ticket, my sister says, to heaven. My sister's wrong. A little girl holds her breath for 90 years. The veins labor, wrestle within knots. A story, a story. Little girl needs to dredge up the story. And I, for the life of me, don't have the heart to make her ream it out. Well, if you hang out in nursing homes, which I've been doing, or in assisted living places, you know that they're all built about the same. They're all built around an inner courtyard or a garden. And you would like to think that all these people who live there would go to that garden, would go to that courtyard. There's benches out there. Would even look out the window at that courtyard. But they don't. So this is called the empty garden. In the myth of the garden was the beginning, the pulse that pulls us all life long back to the fountain, the apple trees, the beds of wild silence. What difference the day? Sabbath crowns every morning, eases the shades at night. But there is no return. I wish I could tell you different. How in this nursing home, the oldest of old, who live so long and are so close, are pulled to this garden where they wait, huddled in afghans, clutching teddy or doll, and tip their faces to the sun. Or sit by a window, taking delight in the progress of spring, schooling themselves on bulbs, their green tongues, the pink or yellow kiss of a one-shot flower. Or this, how each dawn, before the nurses unlatch and lower the bed rails, an army of the bent and trembling, the arthritic, the feeble and forgetful, rise like crumples of paper from their beds. Your mother and mine, stooped and tottering histories in slipper socks and flannel, and hanging on furniture, work a path to the window for that first cold blade of light that's hacked its way through blinds to find them. If only, then I too could believe in an almost angel mother, knocking on window glass to her friend, the only face she recognizes, the other cloudy wonder across the courtyard, and she waving back, nodding yes, yes, and pointing this daffodil or that, as if this day at least she understood. Clap your hands and sing. Spring is back and waiting for us in the garden, sassy and hopeful as a yellow school bus opening and closing its wheezy doors and out the gates at last. But I don't. Dressing the skeleton. If your specimen isn't the medical school variety, suspended from a hook or neck locked in a standing position, you'll find placing it seated in a padded chair works best. Without the supportive structures of tendon, ligaments, etc., maintaining a good vertical balance long enough to complete the procedure can be tricky, if not impossible. Start with the panties. Taking 1 foot at a time, cradle the bones in one hand while you slip the elastic over the medial arch. Slacks go on much the same way, except in order to get each foot through in one smooth motion, you'll have to bunch up the cloth, which will result in a twist of pants and underpants suspended between the tarsals and synovial joint of the knee. I find if you seat yourself facing the project and hook the hand and finger phalanges to your shoulders, then gently lift the entire axial structure to a standing position, balance can be sustained for the 2 or 3 seconds it will take to get the layers up, the elastic adjusted. Dressing the top half should not impose too many difficulties. Turtleneck shirts, especially those with small head openings, might prove problematic if the cervical vertebra can no longer support the weight of the cranium. Bright colors are preferred. Oh yes, make sure to place a thick pad in the underpants in case the whole thing leaks or you'll have to start again from scratch. With mine, I like to finish with a touch of moisturizing lipstick before I brush out the hair, still lush and growing as if it didn't know the mind had blown its case and it was time to stop. Just a few more. Now I'm going to tell you how to live your life, okay? Well, looky here. There's two ways to live a life. Let's imagine that you're standing on a hill and you see a train go by over there, okay? And that train is your life. And you're standing back here on a hill. In other words, you objectify your life. And you say, there's the beginning of my life and there's the end of my life. And there I am. And you say, pretty soon that train will just pass by. And the train will be gone, and I'll die, like everybody else. And after all, if you look at the Earth from Jupiter, what are we? Nothing much. Would it really matter if we all went poof? No, of course not. So that's one way to live your life. That is objectifying everything, being real cool. And everything is right. The other way to live your life is to be standing right in the middle of that train. And it's rattling all around you. You know how it is. You know, you're worried about your chemistry test, or you're worried about the girl who doesn't talk to you, or the boy who's giving you a hard time. You know. It goes on and on like that, by the way, all your life. And it's all noisy and it's confusing, because I don't know about you, but I live my life in a state of confusion. I take it you do too. So you're in the middle of the train, and you're getting bounced around like this, and you hear the beginning of the train, and you hear the end of the train, but you're in the middle of the train. And you say, me die? What? Not me. This is my life. How could Sarah die? Somebody else, maybe, not you. So that's usually the two different ways to live your life. That's what Blake said. I take it you've had him in English? That Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experiment. The ideal way to live a life is to be on the hill and in the train at the same time. To be objective. If you're only objective, then you're really as cold as a cucumber. Somebody says that so-and-so died, you say, well, everybody dies. Not too endearing. On the other hand, if you're only in the train, you have no perspective at all. So the ideal way, Blake said, is to be on the hill and in the train at the same time. So this poem is about that idea. I'm standing in a woods in December. All the leaves have dumped on the ground, and I'm being very objective. It's called Visitation Rites. I sit by a ravine dumped with November. Every leaf the color of old pennies. Ginkgo, oak, maple, hackberry, no difference. Back to the dirt factory. Why isn't that comfort enough? After all, one makes do. A sycamore preens in a rag of winter sun, and each mica-studded boulder flinging light away balls up and waits for heat. Still, April's promise is midget, parsley on a plate compared to this. High noon and no shadow. December's black-white bone bark schematic, that snow like Noah's sheet rushes in to cover, pretending the sinkhole's not there, or the fallen sparrow broken in a ditch. Look, the sun's out, hunting for his children, a once-a-week father in a blue car, a regular Mr. Razzle-Dazzle flashing his brights on every lake, every puddle, every teaspoon of water, searching for the bodies. Too late, says my cup of tea, all the honey's gone. Let me cheer you up a little. Now you think, and rightly so, that I'm a real old girl, and I am. I used to say that and they used to laugh. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was doing a poetry reading in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's a big auditorium like this, and there was a guy sitting right over there, and he kept grinning at me. I didn't think anything of it. People have weird habits, you know. And then after the reading, people came up the way they do, blah, 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 and they bought books. And he stood up and was grinning at me. And he waited until everybody was gone, and then he came very close. And he said, "Don't you remember me?" And then I did. And that bastard had done me dirty 18 years before. So I'm going to warn you, you don't muck around with somebody who writes. They always have the last word. This is called forgive and forget. Like a Swiss Army knife, the day opened. Isn't that wonderful? You know, do you ever hear Ron Fried? He does this all the time. He interrupts himself and he says, "Isn't that wonderful? Don't you want to hear it again?" And I hate it. Everybody, of course, says yes, of course, and I always want to say, "No, just read the damn thing." But isn't that wonderful? You know what a Swiss Army knife looks like, right? And you open it up, and there's screwdrivers and knives and bottle openers and all sorts of torture implements, you know? Like a Swiss Army knife, the day opened. Now, you know what kind of a day that's going to be. Past the Dingo Boot Factory, Mel's guns, the orange highway barriers knocked aside. Past a dog run over in the third lane. So I waited, did my slow dance, and it came. You. The curse at the christening. The proverbial turned up penny. Bad. Mr. Grief, it's been 17 years. Was I supposed to forget? Not recognize your old look under your new look of fat and receding? Not remember your best trick, the red cape of charming dangled in my face until you could rent out an arena, play the finish to the crowd? Or did you think I'd forgive, knowing how you worked it, passive as a penitent, hanging around, big-eyed and jittery, waiting to be saved? The face you learned to use when a TV evangelist stole your mother's eyes and she'd yell hush and flick her ash. Forget it. I don't care if deception rocked at the dug. Smoke and mirrors repents to mirrors and smoke. I can smell a retread by the flapped off stink of rubber on the side of the road. Writing this, I want you to know, I had to keep the windows open, the bathroom fan roaring all day long. Here's one about a thunderstorm. You know how it is in the summer when the thunderstorms come like 3, 4 in a day. And it's called Aria for a Green Sky, and it's about mixing up a thunderstorm with the opera Carmen. Before the rain, the swifts go crazy. Too many bugs to eat before night, and the last commute to the chimney. Then the storm enters, low-browed and ruthless, booming itself in like royalty, trailing its marching legions of rain. 3 drenchings a day, the earth grows tired of it, all those histrionics to clean up after, and the sodden ground. But the insects never get tired. They are the milling chorus crowding the stage, the melodic high whine of chaos and banquet. He's coming, El Torero, the suit of lights, who winds the wind in his crimson cape. The big man, prince of thunderbolt and perpendicular death, breaker of bulls. We clutch our chairs. Listen to the ghosts bellow and bang against the narrow stalls of heaven, the electric fence, the prod, jammed in and pawing at the hoof-churned clouds, red nostrils and wet black hides. Just 2 more. I live in Indiana, and I don't know if you know it or not, but Indiana used to be covered with forest. Of course, now it's all flat. It's made into soybean fields and cornfields. But it used to be covered with forest. And in the spring, June and July especially, we get a lot of rain. And what's left of the forest, or the trees and the lawns, get unbelievably green. And the land in southern Indiana, it goes down, is hilly, and it goes down to the Ohio River. And it turns almost like a jungle. This is called Apollo Comes to Floyd's Knobs, Indiana. There is a Floyd's Knobs, Indiana. It's a little town. It's about as big as the wastepaper basket. And the only thing you have to know about Apollo, you should remember Apollo. Apollo is the god of light and of intellect and of creativity, and the one who invented the lyre poetry. And the only thing you have to remember is the tree sacred to Apollo is the laurel tree. Okay? Got it? Okay. There's an epigraph on this poem, and it's by Roberto Colasso, who is probably the best writer of mythology that is. Only the lover is entheos, says Plato. Only the lover is full of God. Apollo comes to Floyd's Knobs, Indiana. Everywhere is green. Forest green, moss, jungle, viridian. All Indiana, down to the Ohio, pushing against fences, swelling with juice. A fat lady taking up 2 seats on the airplane. We used to be forest here, before the urge for acreage and the axe, pickled beets and church on Sunday. Forest before there was a Sunday, even before God took off for Italy to have his portrait painted. And this year, despite what you've read in the Kroger checkout line, the news for the turn of the millennium isn't who flicked whom sideways, but that we're being rained on, flooded, snaked out. Green is in. When lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed, mister, they're eating up the house. I tell you, Papa's coming home. He's fed up writing prescriptions and orders for the medium indifferent. He's bought himself a bank of clouds, some killer luggage and a watering can, and no kicking the tires or shivering prayer in a booth is going to stop him. Before you know it, sycamores will be sawing through your floorboards. A cedar big as a myth will rise in your toilet. And more white pine, Scotch pine, loblolly than you can count will crash out of your closets, demanding your furniture back. With no more TVs, PCs, plug-ins for your little mouse, who knows what else? You lose your job, your son becomes an English major, and your wife of 32 years decides to throw away all her clothes and frisk in a laurel tree naked, insisting she'll not come down until you learn Greek and climb up, stripped, hot and hard again with love, singing Oreya, Oreya, beautiful, beautiful. You're kidding, you say. My wife, secretary of the bridge club, flashing her puckered thighs and beckoning like the Lorelei, bewitched in varicose and droop. Mister, just climb up. Take your belly and bald head and climb. If only because she is ridiculous. An old hen playing chickie on a balcony, asking only that you rise like the cypress from your knees and clutch her to you in all her bravery and redeeming foolishness. Cradle her face the way you would a crystal cup you could drink from forever. Then hurl yourself for once into your heart's voice. The leaves around your head will whisper what you need to say. And one more, and this is kind of an old one, but this is my signature last poem. So I'll read it. One day I had nothing to write about. I usually have nothing to write about. So I decided to write about my favorite food. And my favorite food is sweet potatoes. This is called Final Instructions. When I die, I want to be buried with sweet potatoes, candied or sautéed with apples and cinnamon, or a pile of mashed on a plate with a drumstick or chop. And don't forget sweet and sour with short ribs and plums in an all-day pot like Grandma made, to be dug up like Pharaoh, wrapped and radiant in a case. And may the burial man dressed in black, whose sad job means a sour face, ho ho and whoop, garnishing my body with slices of yam, like rye crisp around a cheese. And may he go home and tell his wife how he pressed one in each hand and filled my navel up with a dollop, my mouth smeared in puree. And please, it should be October, anniversary of the day I first came stumbling through the door of an afflicted house and stayed, being I was lost and no one to ask how to get me found. So honey, heat me a cairn, yams instead of stones, and dump it on top of me with fanfare and grave ceremony, so I hear it rumbling like apples in autumn, tumbling in a bin, and recognize who I was. In Hawaii, they say yam is fat moon's child. Pilau, sweetness from the moon. That's what I am. You are. Buttons. Yellow buttons. Mama's buttons. Ready to slide through Earth's dirt shirt and button us to her, never to be lost again. Thank you.
Professor Friman would be happy to answer any questions. Anybody has any questions?
Oh, you can ask anything. I don't stay here. I'll leave tomorrow. You can ask anything.
How long have you been writing?
How long have I been writing? Well, when I was your age, I wrote some god-awful poems. Because I was always in love. I'm still like that. You know, we don't change. But they were pretty gruesome. It was always that I was in love with somebody I shouldn't have been in love with. So there's a lot of poetry in that. And then I started to write in my late 30s. Okay, I didn't know about writing programs. I don't know if there were any back then. But I started in my late 30s. And the more you write, the more you have to write. It becomes a sort of, drug, a sort of obsession.
What we got it.
What?
What we got it. The bad night.
It did just what it said in the poem. Well, it was, remember what I just told you? I told you that he, even at the reading, he's just stood there and he just smiled and just waited and waited. And excuse me, there's some men like that. Of course, none of you. That's their technique. They just hang out and wait. Am I touching any buttons out there? Some guys who play best friend. They just hang out and wait. Mr. Innocent, just hang out and wait until they're hanging there and hanging there, and so you finally grab hold of them. But that's all planned. That's what it was, just hanging out and waiting. And then, just what it says in the poem, he waited until he could play off the finish to a crowd. Who, me? So I got him. I don't know what he has since then, and I wrote that a long time ago. He's called me a few times, he wants to talk. I said, I don't want to talk to you. And this is years ago. I said, you don't know me. To the gates of hell, I don't want to talk to you. There is no forgiveness. It takes a long, long time and a lot of bad stuff to get on my, shit list. But once you're on it, you don't get off. There is no buying your way. Give me another question, come on. Yeah.
What advice would you have for people who want to be writers?
Take vitamin pills, first of all. Learn to live with failure. Secondly, learn to live with disappointment. Learn to live in a world that nobody cares about what you're doing, not in this country. And then read, which I don't have to tell you, you know this already. And do it. Just do it. And there is no there to get to. There is no, if I win this prize, if I get this book, there is no there. It's just the process. There is a goddess for poetry. There are, I think, 5 goddesses for poetry. There is no god or goddess for basketball. You wouldn't know it. Basketball's fine, by the way. Don't get me wrong. But there are 4 or 5 muses for poetry. I think 5. All right? And she slaps you up one side of your head and the other. She doesn't take me up. And if it's not good, you do it again and again and again. So, what you are doing is hooking yourself onto a real high hook. The highest hook. Poetry is the queen of the arts. Or writing. So, when I said take vitamin pill, I meant, because the more you write, the more you have to. And don't expect this from anybody. It's nice when it happens. It's lovely. Don't expect it. Yes. Give me another question, come on. Yeah.
So what makes a good poem?
Oh, Lord. Huh?
You just said it.
Well, I did. What was it?
No, you said you do it again and again until it becomes a good poem. So what makes a good poem?
Well, I don't know that answer to that. All right, what makes it good? I can only answer it from my point of view, what makes it good when I think it's good, which is very seldom. I keep bumping up the ante. If a poem is too easy to write, I make a problem. In other words, it's a little bit like pole vaulting. You lift the bar higher. You make an impossible problem. I'm going to write this poem and I'm going to have 8 stanzas and they're going to be 6.5 lines each. It doesn't make any difference what the problem. It doesn't really make any difference. And you make it harder. Right? You pick out a bunch of words like this. Toward. Whistle. Name. Watch. I do this all the time. Banana. All right? Now I've got to write a poem that's going to make sense and I've got to use all those words. Okay? All right? The idea of beginning a poem with, I am wretched. The fact that you are wretched is going to come out in that poem whether you want it or not. Okay? In other words, you make it harder. That's what bumps it up. You know? In a certain sense, it's a little bit like writing poetry is a little bit like mountain climbing. You know, you've got a grappling hook at the end of a rope, and you fling it up there, and you don't know where it lands, but it lands, and you climb up to where it lands. And then you take the rope and fling it up a little higher. Okay. Does that help? Give me a question. Oh, you're so shy, George. Come on, you the handsome one there with the smile. Give me a question. Yeah, you. They grow them handsome down here in Georgia, you know that? Question. No? Yes.
How old is your husband?
He's 20 years younger than I am.
Whoa!
We've been married for 12 years. But that's not really the question you wanted to ask. Is it?
What?
That's not really the question you wanted to ask, is it?
What do you mean by that?
He's 20 years younger than I am. And
So it's 20.
Are you sweet? Give that child an A. Whoever it was. No, he's not 20. He used to be 20 though. What? You want to know how old I am?
Well, if you feel like you want to share.
I'm 68, and he's 48. And when we got married, he was much younger. That was 12 years ago. 68.
How did you find him?
We hired him. I was working in the English department and we hired him. And here comes this jolly, wonderful person with this big smile. God, what a smile. I mean, really, the sun summers in his face. I call him Sunny. Here's this happy person. I never met a happy person. I'm miserable. I am. And we just got to be friends, good friends, because I'm real cynical and he's worse. You know, so we would have department meetings or we would have faculty meetings. Do you have faculty meetings with the whole faculty? We would pass these sort of notes back and forth about, like, can you believe this? And we were just cynical together, you know, and we were just good friends for a long time.
So he was one of those guys that just waited it out.
No. No. He was too dumb. Besides, he was so much younger than us. Who would, you know. No, we didn't. We were just good friends, and it just. And then one day I was walking in the street with him, and I said, "Someday, damn it," I said, "I just want to say, let's just run away and get married." I'm against marriage. I am against marriage. I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe for a man it's okay, but not for a woman. That was a joke. And so I was really shocked that it came out of my mouth. At any rate, he was real chubby, and he lost 50 pounds, which he's kept off for 12 years. He fell in love with me. And we are really about the same age. We are. We're like the same age, emotionally 4 years. And he's my champion. You know, I never had a champion before, so he's my champion. And every night, I'll call him up tonight and he'll say, "So what happened?" And I'll say, "We talked all about you." And he'll be very happy. Give me another question.
Sarcastic.
What?
I said, have you always been sarcastic? It comes out in your writing.
Sure. Sure. Is there another way to be? Give me another question.
You have a favorite poet?
Huh?
You have a favorite poet?
Yeah, who's talking? Oh, yes, my favorite poet is Gerard Manley Hopkins. How many of you know who that is? Gerard Manley Hopkins, it was, well, he's dead now, was a Jesuit priest, of all things. And I have taught him and taught him and taught him, and I cannot read what he wrote without being absolutely thrilled. Just thrilled. And the reason why is that he was probably a very sensuous person. But he became a Catholic, and then he became a Jesuit priest because he was probably afraid of it. And so, he overlays this sensuous middle with this clamping down. And what happens when you clamp something? What happens when you sweep dirt out under the rug? You know? When it comes out, it comes bursting out, just bursting out, and it's thrilling. And that's why he's my favorite.
Where in
Okay.
Indiana are you from?
What?
Where in Indiana are you from?
Who's talking? Yeah. Indianapolis. I live in Indianapolis. But that's not where I'm from. Please. No, Indianapolis. You know Indianapolis?
I live there.
You live there
Yes.
all the time? I mean, were you born there and stuff?
I'm born in Fort Wayne.
In Fort Wayne. Where'd you go to high school?
Down here.
Down
I
here?
lived there for the early part of my life.
Oh, okay. Do you like it here?
Say yes.
Yeah, I lived there.
You like it up there? Why?
I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Home.
It's fine then.
Yeah. Okay?
Okay, well, we have books for sale, and Professor Friman would be happy to sign them and answer any other questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all can give cultural event things to this young lady right here.